My name is Phoebe Washington. I'm 30 years old, and I live in a quiet suburb outside Portland with my boyfriend and our 3-year-old son. From the outside, my life looks peaceful. Stable job, warm home, a child who laughs too loudly and hugs too tightly. But peace wasn't something I was born into. It was something I had to build, brick by brick, after leaving the ruins of the family I came from. I wasn't raised poor. We never worried about food, electricity, or shelter. What we lacked was something harder to name, something that doesn't show up on bank statements. We lacked fairness. When my younger brother Owen and I were small, my parents tried. I'll give them that. We wore matching holiday sweaters, took turns choosing TV shows. If one of us got scolded, the other sat through it too. But everything changed when I turned 12. Owen's teacher called home one afternoon and said he had a rare business mind, exceptional, gifted, leadership instincts. From that day on, my parents looked at him differently. My mother bought him business board games and enrolled him in entrepreneurship camps. My father started using phrases like future potential and return on investment. At dinner, Owen talked about imaginary startups while spaghetti sauce stained his chin. They listened like shareholders. And me? I was the quiet one, not brilliant, not flashy, but steady. I did my homework, helped with chores, never skipped class. I wasn't special, but I was dependable. Apparently that wasn't enough. When I brought home straight A's, my father nodded once. When Owen won a small pitch competition, my mother baked a cake. That was when I understood. Owen wasn't just loved, he was chosen. The favoritism didn't explode all at once. It crept in. Like mold behind the walls. Slow, quiet, destructive. If I was lucky, I escaped to the only places where I felt seen. My grandfather's kitchen, Uncle Andrew's living room. Grandpa Harold didn't say much. He didn't need to. He'd hand me folded bills after yard work and whisper, "Save this. Don't tell your mother." Uncle Andrew asked questions no one else dared to ask. "How are you really doing? Does this feel fair to you?" Those two taught me something my parents never did. Sometimes family doesn't protect you. Sometimes they just give you the tools to escape. And I needed those tools, because I didn't yet know how badly I'd need to leave. The acceptance letter came on a Tuesday afternoon. I remember because it was raining. One of those slow, steady Oregon rains that soaks into your shoes and your thoughts at the same time. The envelope was thick, cream-colored. My name, Phoebe Washington, was embossed across the front like it actually belonged somewhere important. Layton University. Partial scholarship. I stood there in the post office for a full minute, just staring at it. Not because it was everything I wanted, but because it was proof. Proof that I wasn't invisible everywhere. I ran home, heart pounding, rehearsing how I'd tell my parents. I decided to wait until after dinner, when everyone was calm, when maybe, just maybe, they'd listen. But when I walked in, the house was already full. Uncle Andrew and his family were there. Owen was talking loudly about a startup workshop in Seattle. My mother was smiling too wide. My father nodded along, arms crossed, impressed. No one noticed the letter in my hand. Dinner passed like that. My news sitting heavy in my lap, while praise flowed freely to my brother. When we finally moved to the living room for tea, I stood. "I got accepted," I said. My voice shook despite myself. "Layton University, partial scholarship." For a moment, the room went quiet. Then Uncle Andrew slapped his knee and grinned. "That's incredible, Phoebe. I'm proud of you. You earned this." My chest loosened, just a little. I turned to my parents. My father leaned back in his chair, calculating. "Partial scholarship," he repeated. "That still leaves a lot. Tuition, housing, books." "I know," I said quickly. "I'm not asking for everything. Just $10,000 for the first year. I'll figure out the rest." My mother set her teacup down slowly. "You need to be realistic." My stomach tightened. "Owen has potential," she continued. "He'll take this family somewhere." I froze. My father nodded. "If we have to choose, we have to put our money where it counts." The words hit like ice water. "I'm not asking for special treatment," I said quietly. "I'm asking for fairness." He looked at me like I'd spoken nonsense. Fairness isn't splitting things equally. Fairness is investing wisely. Then came the sentence that changed everything. "If you can't accept that," he said, voice flat, "you should move out." Uncle Andrew stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. "She's your daughter." "This is family business," my father said coldly. "Don't interfere." No one spoke after that. I went upstairs, shut the door, and sat on the floor in the dark. Acceptance letter still clenched in my hand, wondering how something that felt so big could mean so little to the people who were supposed to love me most. The next morning, my phone rang at 8 a.m. "Come to my place," Uncle Andrew said. "Now." I didn't ask why. In his kitchen, coffee steaming between us. He didn't waste time. "I'm giving you $50,000, he said. "No interest. Pay it back within 5 years after you graduate." I stared at him, stunned. "Why?" I whispered. "Because I won't let their favoritism steal your future." I shook my head. "I only need 10,000. "No," he said firmly. "I want you focused, not exhausted, not scrambling." Then his voice dropped. "And don't tell your parents. If they know, they'll find a way to take it." I nodded. 2 days later, the money appeared in my new bank account. For the first time in my life, someone had chosen me. And I swore I wouldn't waste it. College didn't fix me. It didn't magically erase the years of being second place in my own home, but it gave me something I'd never had before. Distance. Space to breathe without my parents' expectations pressing on my throat. I kept the promise I made to Uncle Andrew. I didn't tell my parents about the money. Not once. I used only what I needed. I worked part-time at the campus library and picked up shifts at a coffee shop on weekends. Not because I had to, because I refused to become the kind of person my parents always accused me of being. A risk. A poor investment. By the time I graduated, I'd only touched about 20,000 of the 50. When I landed my first job in Seattle, I lived frugally. No fancy apartment, no flashy car. Every month, I sent money back to Uncle Andrew without him asking. 2 years later, on my 25th birthday, I drove to his house with a cashier's check in my purse and a nervous knot in my stomach. "I'm here," I said, holding it out, "to pay back the full 50,000. He didn't even look at it. He just shook his head, half smiling. "You don't need to pay me back." I blinked. "What?" "Come with me," he said. "There's someone I want you to meet." 15 minutes later, we pulled up to my grandfather Harold's house. The living room looked exactly the same. Brown leather armchair by the window, neatly folded blanket on the back, the smell of old books and lemon polish. Grandpa Harold sat in his chair, staring out at the garden like he'd been waiting for us. Uncle Andrew didn't sit. He stood beside me like a protective wall. Then he said the words that knocked the air out of my lungs. "That money wasn't mine." My hands went cold. "It was your grandfather's," he continued. "That night your parents refused to help you, I came here and told him. He didn't need details. He just said one thing. She's the only one who never asks for anything. So this time, let her ask." I turned toward Grandpa Harold, my throat tight. He slowly stood, using the armrest for balance. His back was still straight, his eyes still sharp. He walked over and placed his hand on my shoulder, firm, steady, heavy with meaning. "You kept your word," he said. I couldn't speak. "You didn't ask for more. You didn't get lazy. You didn't run back to them with your hand out." My eyes burned. "So the money doesn't need to be paid back," he finished. "It was never a loan. It was a test." Something in me cracked. Not the painful kind of crack, but the kind that lets light in. I wanted to cry. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to scream at the universe for making love feel like something I had to earn. But Grandpa Harold only gave a small nod. "I'm proud of you, Phoebe," he said, like it was the simplest truth in the world. After that day, I visited more. Not my parents. Never them. Grandpa Harold and Uncle Andrew became my real home base. And then, life did something strange. It got gentle. A year later, I met Ethan. He wasn't loud. He wasn't flashy. He didn't talk like he was auditioning for a spotlight. He listened like he actually cared what was underneath your words. He worked in public safety. Steady job, steady heart. The kind of man who didn't make you prove you were worth staying for. When I finally told him about my family, I expected judgment or pity. Instead, he just said, "Then we'll build something better." We got married quietly. 3 years ago, our son was born. Holding him for the first time was like feeling my entire life reorganize itself around one small heartbeat. His fingers wrapped around mine, and something inside me made a vow without words. He will never feel what I felt. I thought, naively, that maybe my parents would change. That becoming grandparents might soften them. That seeing my baby's face might shake loose whatever had been frozen inside them for years. Maybe they'd finally learn how to love evenly. Then my mother called. Her voice was sweet, too sweet, like honey poured over glass. "Come home," she said. "Let me throw a little party for the baby. Introduce him to the family. Bring everyone closer again." I should have heard the warning in my own chest. But I wanted to believe. I wanted one clean moment. One photo where my son looked surrounded by family instead of standing outside it. So I said yes. And when she insisted she'd handle everything, I transferred her $5,000. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday evening, Ethan and I packed up the baby and drove to my childhood home. The house was transformed. String lights, Tables, balloons, candles, a huge glittery backdrop in the garden. For 1 second, I felt warmth spread through me. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe this was their attempt. Then I walked closer, and the letters on the backdrop sharpened into focus. Not welcome, baby. Not my son's name. It read, Owen and Madison's engagement party. My body went cold so fast it felt unreal. Ethan looked at me, confused. Phoebe, what is this? I couldn't answer. Because suddenly I wasn't 30, standing in a decorated backyard. I was 12 again, watching my brother get celebrated while I stood quietly in the corner, pretending it didn't hurt. My son shifted in Ethan's arms, letting out a small sound, soft, innocent, unaware. And something inside me tightened like a rope pulled too far. I stepped forward, staring at the backdrop like it had personally spit in my face. Then I heard my own voice cut through the music and laughter, loud enough to stop the world. What the hell is going on here? The music died mid-note. Conversations collapsed into whispers. Heads turned. Plates froze halfway to mouths. My mother rushed toward me, panic already cracking her smile. Phoebe, this is just a shared party, she said quickly, fingers closing around my wrist. I thought it would be easier to combine. Did you tell me? I asked. She didn't answer. I pointed at the glittering backdrop. My hand was shaking now. If this is shared, where is my son's name? Still nothing. My father stepped out from the house then, hands in his pockets, jaw tight. Don't do this, he said. You're embarrassing the family. Something in me snapped, not loudly, cleanly. Embarrassing? I echoed. I paid for this party. I thought, stupidly, that maybe this time would be different. Murmurs rippled through the guests. My father's face hardened. Shut up, he growled, or get out. The words landed heavy, final. For a second, the old Phoebe stirred, the one who swallowed pain and apologized for existing. Then I saw my son's face, his wide eyes, his future. I stepped forward. There was a microphone on the small stage near the garden. I climbed up and took it from the stunned host. The yard went silent. If anyone's confused, I said calmly, let me explain. I scanned the faces, relatives, friends, Owen's fiancée Madison, standing pale beside him. This party was paid for with my money, $5,000. It was meant to welcome my newborn son into this family. Gasps. Instead, I continued, voice steady, my parents decided, without asking, to turn it into my brother's engagement party. Owen stared at the ground. This isn't new, I said. It's been my whole life. Scholarships denied, support withheld, always told to step aside because I wasn't the priority. I looked at my son again. But I'm a mother now, and my child will never grow up learning to stay silent to keep the peace. I lowered the mic. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then my father lunged toward the stage, rage twisting his face. Before he reached me, Uncle Andrew stepped in front of him, one hand pressed flat against my father's chest. Not violent, unyielding. The message was clear. I wasn't alone. I turned back to the crowd. Some of you might think I'm overreacting, I said quietly, but this moment is just the last drop in a glass that overflowed years ago. I face my parents fully now, and if my son ever asks me about his grandparents, I paused, feeling the weight of every year behind me, I'll tell him you're dead. The silence was absolute. I'm not your daughter anymore, I finished. Go live your lives with your golden child. I dropped the microphone. Ethan was already beside me, holding our son close. We walked away together. Behind us, the party stayed frozen, like a photograph of a family that no longer existed. At the car, my grandfather placed a hand on my shoulder. Well done, he said simply. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small. The silence that followed my exit from that party wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was clean. No calls, no messages, no apologies disguised as concern. For the first time in my life, I wasn't bracing myself for disappointment. Life slowed down after that. Ethan and I settled into a rhythm that felt almost unreal in its calm. Weekends meant walks with our son, his small fingers wrapped around ours. Mornings meant laughter echoing through a kitchen that had never known shouting. We visited Grandpa Harold often. He adored his great-grandson in the quiet way he did everything, watching from his armchair, smiling softly as our boy crawled across the rug, tapping wooden blocks together like they were the most important business in the world. Sometimes I caught him staring a little too long, like he was memorizing the moment. A year after my son was born, Uncle Andrew called me on a Monday morning. His voice was tight, controlled, too controlled. Phoebe, he said, your grandfather's gone. The world tilted. 2 days earlier, Grandpa Harold had told me he was rereading The Old Man and the Sea and wanted to buy my son a bigger toy set. He sounded fine, strong. I never got to say goodbye. Losing him felt like losing gravity, the one thing that had always kept me steady. A month later, the family gathered for the reading of his will. The living room was full, heavy with expectation. The lawyer read calmly, methodically. Assets distributed, properties assigned. Then he reached the final section. The assets originally designated for Richard and Martha Washington, he read, will instead be transferred in full to Phoebe Washington. The room erupted. My father shouted. My mother cried. Owen slammed his glass on the floor. The lawyer didn't flinch. He read Grandpa Harold's words aloud, about favoritism, injustice, and the party that stole a newborn's welcome. I felt nothing. No triumph, no joy. Just confirmation. I walked out without a word. 2 years passed. Our son turned 3. He learned to run, to argue, to laugh so hard he fell over. And then 2 days ago, the doorbell rang. I opened the door and froze. My mother stood there, smaller than I remembered, thinner, older, afraid. Your father's in the hospital, she whispered. He needs surgery. I need $70,000. I looked at her and felt empty. Where's Owen? I asked. She swallowed. He doesn't have it. I nodded. Then sell the house, I said calmly. Take care of him. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. If you don't leave my doorstep right now, I added, I'll call the police. She turned away. I closed the door. That night, I stood in my son's room watching him sleep, and the question settled in my chest. Quiet, heavy, unavoidable. Was I protecting him or hardening myself beyond repair? I don't know, but I do know this. I am no longer the girl who stayed silent. I am the woman who chose her child. And sometimes that choice costs more than